Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. I welcome you to English grade 7 video lessons. I'm your instructor Zahmid. I hope that you're doing well. My dear learners, we are dealing with our unit number 3, Paradise or Paradise Lost. And this will be our lecture number 2 with the competency of vocabulary. Now let's read and explore our students' learning outcome for this video lesson. So my dear learners, our SLO is understand and utilize similes, metaphor, personification, mood, alliteration, imagery, and onomatopoeia, for example, clang, buzz, twang, given in the text, and paragraph writing. My dear learners, this SLO is about figures of speech, and in this SLO and in this video lesson, we are only going to deal with similes, personification, and alliteration. The remaining figures of speech will be covered later in other lectures. We will be trying to understand and then using or utilizing these figures of speech in our text and paragraph writing. So let's get started, but first let's think about this SLO that we have already covered in the previous. Here is a vertical linkage of this SLO that you can easily recall. Now my dear learners, let's do a very interesting quick brainstorming session. So how will you compare two different things having similar qualities? So if you are given this task, how would you do it? My dear learners, take time, pause the video, think about it, and come back quickly because we are going to start our topic, which is about figures of speech. Now, let's see what is figures of speech. First, let's try to understand it by using the definition. So, a figure of speech is figurative language in the form of a single word or phrase. It can be a special repetition, arrangement, or omission of words with literal meaning, or a phrase with a specialized meaning not based on the literal meaning of the word. My dear learners, we don't take figures of speech literally. Now, let's see. It can be found in the form of a single word or a phrase. And we also learned that it can be special repetition, it can be comparison, likeness, whether it's for two similar things or different things at all. Now, we also see that the meaning is not based on the literal meaning of the word. Figures of speech is actually used in figurative language and figurative writing. Now, this is very much clear. Let's look at some examples to clarify the figures of speech. Whenever you say something but you don't mean it literally as it is, you are using a figure of speech. Let's say you are about to head out to the store and your mother says, "You better take a jacket. It's raining cats and dogs out there." Now, when she says this, does your mom literally mean that there are animals that are falling from the sky? No, that does not mean literally. It is emphasized that it's raining heavily. Now, when we use this phrase like raining cat and dogs, we would say that we are using a figure of speech. Now, let's move on. Let's talk about simile first. Simile is a figure of speech. Let's see what it is and how we can use it in our paragraph writing. So, if you remember, a simile is a literary device that compares two things using the words like or as. For example, I was standing perfectly still like a statue. Now, two things are being compared. standing still and like a statue. Now we know that statues are inanimate object and they are still, they are not moving. And when a person is standing without moving, we compare it with something like a statue. So this is a simile, and the word like is coming here, which fulfills our requirement of like in similes. Another example is the biscuit was as tasteless as mud. Now the word as is used to compare two things using the word as tasteless as mud, and as will be coming before this and after. It will come two times. Now what does it mean? The biscuit was as tasteless as mud. It means that the biscuit has no taste, and it is compared to mud because mud is also without any taste and it is not likable. So it shows the disgust of the eater who is eating the biscuit. This is how we use our simile. We compare two things to make a point or to show our idea, our likeness, dislikeness, etc. So now let's talk about personification. Personification is giving a human quality to an inanimate object. Any type of emotion, gesture, thought, or action that a person, a human being, would make can be applied to any non-human, let's say any animal, anything that is inanimate object. So when you give human-like qualities that human beings possess and you give it to non-living things or other than human beings, we call this personification. We personify by using human qualities and giving it to those things, those living beings who do not do this and who are not familiar with these gestures, thoughts, emotions, or actions. So we use personification to beautify our writing and to actually try to make the reader understand, because the reader is obviously a human being. So human beings can understand it better if their things are given human qualities. These things is very relatable to human beings. Now let's look at some examples over here. Flowers are dancing. We know that flowers do not dance. We are giving this quality to show a picture, to show an image that flowers are moving, as you can see over here. So, and another example is trees are bored. Now trees do not have this emotion of feeling boredom. Human beings feel boredom. When we say trees are bored, we are saying that the trees are not having fun, they are not being treated and entertained properly, and they are not being taken care of. So, and another example is clouds are angry. Now it means that it's, the thunderstorm, it's gonna rain heavily. The clouds are angry. It's going to rain heavily. Now clouds do not get angry. Human beings do. We are giving this quality of a human being to something like a cloud to show emphasis and to make it relatable to the readers. Now let's talk about alliteration. If you remember, alliteration, it's a literary device or it's a figure of speech in which a number of words having the same first consonant sounds occur close together in a series. So what do we learn from this? Same first consonant sounds will be coming together. So let's see. Alliteration example in poem. Now, three gray geese in a green field grazing. Now, this consonant G, the sound G is coming over and again in this first line. Now we can clearly see that alliteration is being used. You can, if you read it, 3 gray geese in a green field grazing, the sound G is coming over and again, and also the letter G is coming again and again. Similarly with the line, gray were the geese and green was the grazing, or Betty Botter bought some butter, but she said the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter better. So this is an example of alliteration using this poem. So we use alliteration to make our poem or our work interesting to sound, and alliteration makes us and helps us remember anything, whether it's short or long, easily, because the consonants are repeating over and again. Now let's see, there are also alliteration in names. So the names, all these names have the sounds. Let's say Mickey Mouse, the Mickey Mouse, the sound M, the letter M is repeating. So we find alliteration in names also. Alliteration in tongue twisters. Tongue twisters are a very good thing if you want to practice your articulation and your speaking skill and your articulation and your pronunciation. And now in tongue twisters, let's say, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck would? A woodchuck would chuck all the wood he could chuck if a woodchuck would chuck wood. Now this is a very interesting tongue twister that you can practice with your friends, with your siblings. This will allow you to say all these different kind of sounds together in a very fluent way. Will be a very good speaker of English language. So you can try and practice this tongue twister, and you can see that in tongue twisters they have alliteration. Why? Because alliterations are kind of very tricky to say. This is what we need to practice in our tongue twisters. Now after learning about all these 3 figures of speech for today's SLO, simile, personification, and our alliteration, here is a simulation video for your better understanding that you can watch later and learn more about figurative language and figures of speech. Now coming to your classroom activity from page 21, you have to read this poem aloud, work in pairs, and underline the comparative phrase and tell the class how it's a simile. Underline all of the willow similes in one color and all of the ginkgo similes in another color. Now this will be very interesting for you to practice your simile figure of speech. Another one is you have to work in pairs, think of more inanimate objects and give them human qualities. And this is for your personification, and for alliteration, point out how alliteration is used in the following tongue twister. Now this again, this tongue twister is really interesting to practice. So we have covered all these 3 in our classroom activity. Now this is your worksheet, and for your homework from page 22, you have to write a sentence using verbs taken from vocabulary that humans do that may apply to the following. First one has been done. Let's say clouds. The sad clouds were ready to spill their tears upon the trees. Clouds cannot be sad, nor do they have tears. So we gave this human quality of being sad or the sadness to the clouds. You can solve the rest of them by yourself. And finally, we are here at the end with some resources for your better understanding. Worksheet, presentation, lesson plan, question bank, and a skill sheet. All these are attached in the description of the video that you can find easily. My dear learners, thank you for listening, and I hope that you had great time learning about figures of speech. What are they? how they are used, and simile, personification, and alliteration have been very clearly learned and used practically in our examples. Till the next video lesson, Allah Hafiz.